Have you ever felt like a failure as a mom? That's what I want to talk about today because I think it's something that a lot of us moms have struggled with. I remember the first time I felt like a failure. My oldest son, was probably less than 6 months old, and we had made a trip to the grocery store, and it was just a bad trip. He was unhappy the whole time. He cried for bananas. He cried for animal crackers. He cried because he wanted out of the cart. Nothing was making him happy. The moment I got to my car, I just started crying, and I started crying out to God and just saying, I feel like such a failure. I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I just don't know how to be a good mom. Have you ever been there? It wasn't long after I had that experience that I read in Pete Wilson's book called Let Hope In. I read a story about Angie Smith. And Angie Smith is an author and speaker, and she shared a story about a vase. Now, one time she was driving home, and she felt like the Lord was telling her to shatter a particular vase when she got home. She thought it was an odd request, but she really felt like it was from the Lord, so she chose to follow through. She shattered this vase, and as you can imagine, it went everywhere. And then she felt like the Lord was telling her to piece it back together again. Again, she felt like it was from God, so she chose to obey, and she started piecing it back together again. And as she did so, God reminded her how she was like a broken vase, how she too had places where she had been broken, where she had been hurt, where she had hurt others, where she had let people down, and maybe aspects where she felt like she wasn't good enough, like so many of us often feel. And this is what the Lord whispered to Angie's spirit. My dearest Angie, how do you think the world would have seen me? If it wasn't for the cracks, I couldn't seep out the way I do. Ladies, when you feel like a failure as a mom, I think this is something we need to remember too. When we feel like failures, there are two things we need to remember. Number one, just like Angie learned and like God has been teaching me, brokenness isn't always a bad thing. Brokenness is often the avenue that God uses to seep out of our lives, to allow people to see Him living in us. When we mess up, we have the opportunity to ask for forgiveness and to teach our children about that. When we feel like failures, we have opportunities to grasp and cling to God and let Him fill us up with His Spirit so that His Spirit is what overflows out of us. So that's number one. When we feel like failures, we need to remember that God's Spirit can often seep out of our brokenness. And number two, we need to remember that God will fill in the gaps. When we fall short, God will fill in the gaps. My name is Lindsey Bell. I'm the author of Searching for Sanity. It's a parenting devotional. And I hope that I'll get to connect with you more. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share about when you feel like a failure as a mom.